In this video, we are going to be learning a lot about fractions, decimals, and percents. So let's look at our first example, which is actually the easiest example, changing a fraction to a decimal. Write the following fraction in decimal notation. So I have this fraction 2 over 5. So really all that I'm expecting you to do is just put this in your calculator and do 2 divided by 5, which is going to give me 0.4. I'm not expecting you to do any sort of long division here to change the fraction to a decimal. Now let's change a mixed number to a decimal. Write the following mixed number in decimal notation. We have 72 and 3/10 here. And so the first method I'm going to show you is how to change the mixed number to an improper fraction. And so to do this, you're going to take the whole number 72 and you're going to multiply it by the denominator of 10, and that's going to give us 720. And then we're going to add the numerator 3 to get a 723 for my numerator of my improper fraction, and then 10 is going to stay the denominator. And then like I showed you in the previous slide, that to get that fraction to a decimal, you're going to take 723 and divide it by 10, and that's going to give you 72.3. The second method is actually just to change the decimal, the fraction part to a decimal, 3 over 10. You can use a calculator if you can't do this mentally. So 3 out of 10 is actually 3/10, which is equal to 0.3. And so the next step of method 2 is to add the whole number 72 and add the decimal 0.3 to get my final answer of 72.3. Let's change the decimal to a fraction form, and we're going to reduce if possible. So we have a decimal of 0.125. That is 125 thousandths. That's important for you to recognize that. So I'm going to make that equal to 125 over 1,000. Now I'm ready to reduce. I know that both the numerator and denominator are both divisible by 5, so I'm going to do that. And they continue to be divisible by 5 until I get my final answer of 1 over 8. Now let's change another decimal to fraction form, and we're going to be reducing if possible. So we have 40.32, which is 40 and 32 hundredths. And so we are going to reduce here. We're going to reduce the fraction part. 32 and 100 are both divisible by 2. And so when we do that, we get 16 over 50. And then we're going to continue reducing by 2 again. We get 40 and 8/25. And once we get to this point, we are actually done. But if we wanted to change the mixed number to an improper fraction, we can do that. So we would multiply the 40 and the 25 and then add the 8 to get my new numerator of 1008, and the denominator would be 25. So that would be the improper fraction answer. So changing decimals and numbers to a percent, let's look at example 1. We have 0.05, and so to do this, there's actually a couple of ways. I focus on one particular method, and that is to change a decimal to a percent. I'm just going to multiply that number decimal by 100. So to get my answer, I'm going to do 0.05 times 100, and that's going to give me 5%. Looking at example 2, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Even though it's 1.23, I'm still going to multiply that by 100, and that's going to give me 123%. And then in example 3, even though I have the whole number 3, I still am going to multiply that by 100 to get my percentage of 300%. Okay, how about if we want to change a fraction to a percent, and we're going to round the answer to the nearest tenth if possible. And so in example 1, I have the fraction 60 over 100. Anytime you have a fraction where the denominator is 100, the percentage is actually very, very easy. It's just going to be the numerator, which is going to be 60%. And let's look at example 2. I have 4 over 9. This is a little bit different. I'm going to use my calculator to actually change it to a decimal first. Since I'm going to be rounding later to the nearest tenth, I want at least 3 places after the decimal. You can have more, but you need at least 3 to round correctly. And so recall that to change a decimal to a percent, you're going to multiply that decimal by 100. So I'm going to take 0.444 and and times that by 100, and I'm going to get my percentage of 44.4%, and that would be rounded correctly to the nearest tenth of a percent. So how would we change the mixed number to a percent? So I'm going to follow my method of changing that mixed number to an improper fraction first. So I'm going to take 2 times 5, and then I'm going to add 1 to get my new numerator to be 11, and then my denominator is still going to be 5. Then I'm going to use my calculator to get a decimal, which is going to equal 2.2. And then to change a decimal to a percent, all I'm going to do is multiply that decimal by 100. So I'm going to do 2.2 times 100, and that's going to give me 220%. Now I saved the best for last, changing a percent to a decimal. It's actually very easy. So let's look at example 1. We have 17%, and so to change a percent to a decimal, we're going to divide that percent by 100. And so we're going to take 17, divide by 100, and we're going to get 0.17 or 17 hundredths. And then in example 2, we have 186%. We're going to do the exact same thing and divide by 100, and that's going to give us a decimal of 1.86.